The forgotten phone. I'm Mark, 27 years old, an ordinary office worker living in an old apartment building. There's nothing special about this place other than the fact that it's cheap and quiet. But one October night, I experienced something I hope to never go through again. It all began when I found an old phone under the couch in my living room. I live alone and the phone wasn't mine. It was an old smartphone, its screen cracked, and the battery nearly dead. As I picked it up, the screen suddenly lit up. There was no lock screen or password. It went straight to the home screen. There was only one app, its icon a glowing red eye. Beneath it were the words, "Watching you." I laughed, thinking it was just some prank. Curious, I opened the app. Inside was a completely black interface, empty except for a single button in the center that read, "Open camera." Pressed it. The front camera turned on and I saw my face. Nothing unusual. But as I looked closer, I noticed something that sent chills down my spine. In the upper right corner of the screen, a faint shadow moved. I turned around, glancing behind me. Nothing. The room was completely empty. Just me and the dim light of my desk lamp. When I looked back at the screen, the shadow was gone. The first message. I set the phone down, trying to convince myself that my eyes were playing tricks on me. But just a few minutes later, the phone vibrated. A message appeared on the screen. "I see you." A shiver ran down my spine. The message didn't have a sender, just white text on a black background. I replied, trying to keep calm. "Who is this?" There was no response. But then the camera turned on again, this time the rear camera. On the screen I saw my living room, but the angle wasn't from where I was sitting. It was as if the camera was being held by someone standing in the corner of the room. I froze, my eyes glued to the screen. Slowly, a pale hand reached into the frame, touching the chair I was sitting on. I whipped my head around, but the chair was empty. There was no one there. The knock at the door. When I turned back to the phone, the image on the screen had disappeared. But the phone buzzed again, and this time another message appeared. "Open the door." At that exact moment, I heard a knock at my apartment door. I froze in place, straining to listen. The knock was soft, almost as if someone was tapping with their fingertips. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The knocking stopped. I waited for several minutes in silence, but nothing happened. Thinking I was imagining things, I tried to calm myself. But just as I let out a shaky breath, I heard another sound behind me. Click. It was the sound of my closet door opening. Morning comes. I snapped my head around, but the closet door was closed. Nothing seemed out of place. The phone vibrated once more. When I picked it up, a final message appeared. "I've been here for a long time. Don't you remember?" The words sent a shiver down my spine. A long time? I racked my brain, trying to figure out if the phone had been left behind by the previous tenant, or if this was just someone's twisted joke. Before I could think further, the screen switched to the front camera again. My face appeared, pale in the dim light. But this time it wasn't just a fleeting shadow. A face, white as a sheet with hollow black eyes, stood directly behind me. I didn't dare turn around. The following morning, I woke up on the floor, the phone still lying beside me. But when I checked it again, it was completely blank. No apps, no messages, no photos, nothing. The only thing left was a faint smudge on the screen like a fingerprint. I didn't stay in the apartment after that. That same day, I packed my things and moved into a hotel near work. But no matter where I went, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Like something was always just behind me, waiting for me to look. Few days later, at the office, my coworker Sarah received a strange message from me. It was just one short sentence. "I'm quitting. I can't do this anymore." Sarah told everyone, and they tried calling my phone, but there was no answer. After a few tries, they assumed I had left without saying goodbye. But what they didn't know was, I never sent that message. Story 2. The vacation at the strange house. There were 5 of us. Julia, Sarah, Kevin, Liam, and Anna. Tonight, we're in a strange house deep in the woods. This was supposed to be a relaxing getaway. But now I'm sitting here trying to write everything down. If someone finds this, I might not be here anymore. The first day, the trip started off normal. Kevin, who was always good at finding cheap places online, had found this house. Super cheap and perfect, he said.
No Wi-Fi. No unas, just natura.
Sounded fun, so we all agreed. We arrived Friday afternoon. The house was deep in the woods, completely isolated from the outside world. The road leading to it was narrow, littered with dry leaves, and surrounded by thick trees. The house itself was a 2-story wooden cabin. It looked normal enough from the outside, but for some reason, I felt uneasy the moment I saw it. "This place is perfect," Kevin exclaimed as we stepped inside. The house had a spacious living room with an old fireplace, a simple kitchen and 5 bedrooms upstairs. But everything inside felt old, as if it had been abandoned for years. "This house smells weird," Sarah whispered as we climbed the stairs. "I think it's just damp wood," Anna said, forcing a smile. That evening we lit a fire outside, grilled some food and told scary stories. Liam's story, as usual, was the creepiest. A tale about a deranged killer roaming the woods. "Be careful," he teased, his eyes glinting in the firelight. "If you hear footsteps outside your window, don't open it. It could be him." Everyone laughed, but I didn't. There was something about the woods surrounding us, so dark I couldn't see beyond a few feet, that made my skin crawl. The second day, the morning was calmer. Kevin and Liam went fishing at a nearby stream while Sarah, Anna, and I cleaned around the house. We found some old items. A rusty pocket watch, a few black and white photographs of people we didn't recognize, and a faded notebook. "What's this?" Anna said, flipping it open. Inside were scribbled notes. The first few pages only had short phrases like "they've arrived" and "first night." But later pages became frantic, as if written in desperation. "They never leave. They're here. They're watching me." Sarah slammed the notebook shut, her face pale. "It's just someone losing their mind," she said, but her voice didn't sound convinced. That evening we played cards in the living room. The fire in the fireplace crackled softly. When Anna got up to grab water, she suddenly froze mid-step. "There's someone outside the window," she whispered. Kevin laughed loudly. "Come on, Anna. That's the oldest trick in the book." "No," Anna said, her voice trembling. "There's someone." We all looked at the window but saw nothing except darkness. I tried to shake off the unease, but I couldn't forget the look on Anna's face as she sat back down, gripping her glass tightly. The third day, Liam was gone. We didn't notice until breakfast. He wasn't in his room and all of his belongings were still there. Kevin said he might have gone for a walk, but when we searched the area around the house, there was no sign of him. By noon Anna disappeared too. We searched every corner of the house, calling her name until our voices were hoarse, but no one answered. Her belongings were still in her room, just like Liam's. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. By nightfall only Sarah, Kevin, and I were left. We decided not to leave each other's sides. Kevin, now completely serious, sat quietly with a baseball bat he found in the garage. Then we heard footsteps upstairs. We froze. Kevin motioned for us to follow him as he gripped the bat tightly. But as we reached the staircase we heard laughter. Not loud but long and drawn out, like someone was struggling to hold it back. Kevin glanced at us before pushing the door to the stairs open. There was no one upstairs. But in the dim hallway, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Wet, muddy footprints trailed across the floor, leading to every single room. The inn. I don't know where Kevin and Sarah have gone. I only remember their screams, the sound of running footsteps and then silence. Now, I'm the only one left in this house. I can hear knocking behind me but I don't dare turn around. If someone finds this, please don't come to this house. Don't try to look for us. Because I can hear them. They're just outside. They're waiting. Story 3. The room that wasn't there. I'll start by saying this. I don't believe in ghosts. I never have. But what happened to me 2 weeks ago has made me question everything I thought I knew about reality. My name is Daniel, 29 years old. A software engineer living in the city. My life is simple. Work, go home, play games, and sleep. That is, until my company sent me on a 3-day business trip to a small town. The accommodation arranged by the company was an old hotel built in the 1980s. There was nothing remarkable about it. Just its outdated yellow walls and long winding hallways. When I arrived, the receptionist, an elderly man with a grumpy face, handed me the key to room 305. "Your room's on the 3rd floor at the end of the left hallway," he said, adding in a hushed tone. "Just don't open any other doors." I laughed, thinking it was just a weird joke. The first night, room 305 wasn't bad, though it felt oddly cold despite the air conditioner being off. It had a double bed, a small wooden desk, and a window overlooking the parking lot. Everything seemed fine until I noticed something strange. There was no number on the door. I hadn't realized it earlier, but as I stepped out to get dinner, I noticed that all the other doors had numbers except mine. When I returned to the hotel around 9 p.m., the hallways were eerily quiet. No footsteps, no voices coming from the other rooms. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock. As I unlocked my door, I heard faint laughter coming from the end of the hallway. It wasn't loud, but it was drawn out and unsettling, like someone was trying to stifle a laugh. I turned my head looking toward the end of the hallway, but there was no one there. The second night. The next evening I went to bed earlier, but around 2 a.m., I woke up to a strange noise. It was a knocking sound, not on my door, but on one of the doors down the hallway. I listened closely, trying to figure out where it was coming from, but then the sound moved, as if someone was going from door to door, knocking softly on each one. Then it stopped. I closed my eyes, trying to ignore it, but then my phone lit up. On the screen was a strange notification. Room 306 is open. Would you like to enter? My heart raced. Room 306? When I checked in, I distinctly remembered the hallway only had rooms numbered 301 to 305. How could there be a room 306? I opened my door and looked down the hallway. Just as I remembered, there was no room 306. But as I was about to close my door, I caught a glimpse of something at the far end of the hallway. A door. It hadn't been there before. The mysterious room. I don't know where I found the courage, but I walked to the end of the hallway. The door looked different from the others. It had no number, and the paint was peeling off, exposing old, splintered wood underneath. I placed my hand on the knob and it turned easily. Inside was pitch black. I turned on my phone's flashlight, but the beam seemed to get swallowed by the darkness. The space inside felt unnaturally large, as if I'd stepped into somewhere that didn't belong in the hotel. On the floor I saw footprints, wet and muddy, leading deeper into the darkness. I wanted to turn back, but before I could, the door slammed shut behind me. The inn. I don't know how long it's been since I walked into this room. My phone has no signal and the clock on the screen isn't working. I followed the footprints, but it feels like I'm walking in circles. There's something here. I can't see it, but I can hear whispers and feel eyes watching me. If someone finds this, please don't come to this hotel. And if you ever see a room that doesn't exist, don't go in. Because I'm not sure I'll ever get out. Story 4. The paintings that weren't there. My family decided to go on a weekend trip. It was my dad's idea. A getaway to escape the hustle and bustle of the city and enjoy nature. Joining me were my dad, mom, and my little sister Lily, who just turned 8 this year. We rented a cabin in the woods, found online through a vacation rental site. The pictures looked amazing. A cozy wooden house with large windows, a warm fireplace, and most notably walls adorned with artistic paintings that gave it a rustic yet elegant charm. "This looks perfect," Mom said while browsing the photos. Dad grinned, saying it was a steal. The price was surprisingly cheap, and the owner didn't require much of a deposit. None of us questioned why the rate was so low. The first day, we arrived late in the afternoon. The cabin looked just like the photos, beautiful, secluded, and peaceful. Lily immediately ran down to the nearby lake, excited to play in the water. Mom unpacked our things while Dad and I explored the house. "These paintings are amazing," Dad said as he looked at the living room wall. I glanced up and saw a large landscape painting of a field of flowers, but something about it felt off. The painting seemed blurry, as though a thin layer of mist covered it. "Just a bit of dust," Mom said when I mentioned it. I didn't think much of it and joined everyone in preparing dinner. The first night, after dinner, we gathered by the fireplace to tell stories and play games. Lily seemed particularly fascinated by the paintings on the walls. One depicted a woman standing in the middle of a forest, and another showed a house eerily similar to the one we were staying in. "These paintings feel like they're watching us," Lily said with a giggle. Her words sent a chill down my spine. I glanced at the painting of the woman. For a brief moment I thought her eyes moved, but when I looked closer everything was still. Shaking off the feeling, I decided to head to bed early. Lily slept with Mom and Dad while I had a room to myself. Around midnight, I woke up to a strange sound. It was faint at first, almost like whispering. I thought it might be the wind, but as I listened closer, it sounded more like voices. "I'm not sure what we should do," a voice murmured softly. I turned on my bedside lamp and stepped into the hallway, but it was empty. Everything was silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. As I returned to my room, a shiver ran down my spine. I could have sworn I saw a shadow flicker in one of the paintings in the hallway. The second day. The next morning I told my parents about the whispering, but they brushed it off. "This house is old, Daniel," Dad said. "Probably just some drafty windows making noise." The rest of the day passed uneventfully. Lily played by the lake while I helped Mom prepare lunch. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I glanced up, it felt like the paintings had changed. The woman in the forest painting seemed closer to the trees now, and the house in another painting had a faint glow in one of its windows, something that wasn't there before. That night everything went wrong. The second night, I woke up again, this time to knocking, steady, deliberate knocks that echoed through the house. At first I thought it was coming from the front door. But as I listened closer, I realized it was moving. Someone or something was knocking on each door in the house. Then it stopped. I barely had time to catch my breath before my phone lit up on the nightstand. A notification appeared. "Room 3 has been opened. Would you like to enter?" My heart raced. Room 3? The cabin only had labeled bedrooms for my parents, Lily, and me. There was no room 3. I opened my door and looked down the hallway. Just as I remembered, there were only 3 doors. But as I turned to head back inside, my eyes caught something at the far end of the hall. A door. It hadn't been there before. The truth behind the paintings. I don't know where I found the courage, but I walked toward the end of the hallway. The door was unlike the others. It had no number, and its paint was peeling, revealing the old, splintered wood underneath. I reached for the knob and turned it. The room beyond was pitch black. I turned on my phone's flashlight, but the light barely penetrated the darkness. The space felt unnaturally large, far bigger than the dimensions of the cabin should allow. On the floor I saw footprints, muddy, wet prints leading deeper into the shadows. Before I could turn back, the door slammed shut behind me. The final realization. I don't remember how long I stood there, frozen. When I finally found the courage to run back to my parents' room, I screamed their names and banged on the door. But when I opened it, the room was empty. The bed was untouched, as if no one had ever slept there. I rushed to Lily's room, but it was the same, empty. Panicking, I ran downstairs, my footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. That's when I saw it. Every painting on the walls was gone. The frames remained, but there were no images inside. Instead, they were glass. And behind the glass, faces stared at me. Dozens of them. Pale, expressionless faces pressed against the glass, their eyes unblinking, their mouths frozen in faint smiles. I don't remember what happened after that. If someone finds these notes, please don't stay in this cabin. And if you see a house with beautiful paintings, check carefully before stepping inside. Because you might be the next one they watch. Story 5. The call from downstairs. Jack was a 12-year-old boy, curious by nature and sometimes a little mischievous. That evening, his parents told him they would be out for dinner with friends and reminded him to stay home and finish his homework. It was his first time staying home alone at night, but Jack didn't feel worried. Around 7 p.m., Jack was in his room, headphones on, playing games. The house was quiet, lit only by the dim glow of his desk lamp. "Jack, come down for dinner." His mom's voice called out from downstairs, making Jack jump. He pulled off his headphones, stood up, and headed toward the stairs without thinking much of it. But as he descended, a strange feeling crept into his mind. He remembered his mom had said she wouldn't be back until late. When he reached the kitchen, the lights in the dining and living room were on. The dining table was neatly set with plates and bowls, but there was no food. "Mom!" Jack called out. No answer. Something's wrong. Jack slowed his steps, straining his ears. The house was eerily silent, so quiet he could hear the ticking of the wall clock. He took another step closer to the kitchen. "Jack, I said come down for dinner." The voice rang out again, louder this time, as if his mom was right there in the kitchen. But something about it felt off. Sounded like his mom, but not quite right. There was something slightly wrong, like someone trying to mimic her voice. "Mom, you're home early?" Jack asked hesitantly. No response. The sound in the kitchen. Jack cautiously stepped into the kitchen. It was completely empty. He looked around, searching for some explanation. Then he heard it. A faint clinking noise, like someone tapping a spoon against the counter. "Mom, stop messing with me," Jack said, trying to sound brave. But there was no reply. Just the steady rhythmic tapping. Jack took a step back. As he turned to run, the kitchen lights flickered and went out. Darkness and footsteps. Jack froze. The kitchen was now shrouded in complete darkness. He was about to sprint back upstairs when he heard it. A soft, deliberate set of footsteps behind him. "Jack!" The voice called again, this time a whisper close to his ear. Jack spun around, but no one was there. Heart pounding, he bolted up the stairs, slammed his bedroom door shut, and locked it. He switched on his desk lamp and grabbed his phone with trembling hands. He called his mom. The phone rang a few times before she picked up. "Hi, sweetheart, why are you calling?" Her warm, familiar voice said. "Mom, are you home? You just called me down for dinner." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then her voice, now tinged with concern. "Jack, honey, I'm still at the restaurant. I told you we'd be home late." Jack felt the blood drain from his face. He hung up and backed into the corner of his room. Before he could process what was happening, there was a knock at his door, soft, steady. "Jack, come down for dinner," the voice called again, this time from just outside his door. The ending. Jack didn't open the door. He curled up in the corner of his room, listening as the knocking grew louder, faster, more insistent. By midnight, his parents returned home. They found Jack's bedroom door wide open, but there was no sign of him. His phone lay on the desk, the screen still showing his last call to his mom. And downstairs, the dining table was set with a full meal, enough for 5 people. Story 6. Jame's dreams. Jame was a quiet and reserved 15-year-old boy. But there was something about him that no one could explain. Jame frequently had dreams so vivid and lifelike that they seemed to blur the line between reality and imagination. Once Jame dreamed he was a chef. The next morning, his family woke up to a perfect breakfast on the dining table, though Jame insisted he had no memory of making it. On another occasion, he dreamed he was a repairman, and by morning, every broken appliance in the house was mysteriously fixed. First, his family found it amusing, even helpful. But not all dreams are harmless. One night, everything changed. A strange dream. That night, Jame dreamed he was in a cold, sterile room illuminated by harsh white fluorescent lights. In front of him was a shiny metal table, and on it lay a small creature pinned down at its limbs. "Today's lesson is the study of anatomy," a voice said, though Jame couldn't see who it belonged to. In the dream, Jame followed the instructions. Everything felt disturbingly real. The sensation of the scalpel in his hand, the glint of the light on the metal table, and even the faint smell of antiseptic in the air. Yet he felt no hesitation or remorse. "This is just practice," Jame told himself in the dream. "It's nothing to be scared of." When he finished, he left the room. But for some reason, a vague sense of unease lingered as he walked away. A strange morning. The next morning, Jame woke up later than usual. The house was eerily quiet. He went downstairs but found no sign of his parents. As he entered the living room, Jame froze. The dining table was set, but something about it felt off. The plates were arranged neatly, but not in their usual places. The chairs looked as if someone had been sitting in them and had just left. And when Jame glanced at the mirror on the wall, he noticed a faint red stain on the collar of his shirt. The police arrive. A few hours later, the police showed up at Jame's house. The family's housekeeper had called them after being unable to contact Jame's parents. "Jame, have you seen your parents?" an officer asked. Jame shook his head, his voice trembling. "No, I don't know. I just woke up." The police searched the house and found several puzzling clues. In his parents' bedroom, everything was in disarray. Faint red smears stained the floor, but there were no signs of anyone being there. The most unsettling discovery, however, was in Jame's room. Underneath his bed, officers found strange items. A small knife, a few jars containing unidentified liquids, and scraps of fabric that appeared to be from his parents' clothing. An unsolved mystery. Jame was taken in for questioning, but he claimed to have no memory of what had happened. "I just had a dream," he said, his eyes filled with fear. "I didn't do anything, it was just a dream." The investigation stalled. Jame's parents were never found. Months later, Jame was sent to a psychiatric treatment facility. The doctors tried to help him understand the strange connection between his dreams and reality. But one night Jame dreamed again. This time he dreamed he was dismantling a large machine. In the dream he could hear the clinking of metal, the sound of screws being loosened. The next morning, all the security cameras in the facility had been disabled, and Jame was gone, leaving no trace behind.